Next section that we're going to talk about is compositing. Some digital artists render elements in their scenes separately and then composite them together later. Now this gives them the flexibility excuse me, to make changes to those elements without actually having to re-render the entire scene. You also might want to render elements out separately too to achieve effects that are not possible in Maya. So for instance, if you wanted a blurred shadow, a blurred depth map shadow, Maya doesn't blur depth map shadows. So what you would do is you would render out the shadows separately, bring them into a package that has some kind of blur function, blur them in there, and then recomposite them. So what I've got here is I've just got a cone going through a torus, and if we just look at the render view window, this is a color channel, and that's the alpha for what I've rendered here. Now the alpha channel associated with each pixel determines the opacity of that pixel. So if we were to render these elements out separately, the cone and the torus, with this alpha channel, with the alpha channel being pure white for the cone and pure white for the torus, bring it into a compositing package. The compositing package isn't going to know that the cone goes through the torus. So what's going to happen is it might put the cone on top of the torus or the torus on top of the cone. So we're going to want to change the alpha channel for this particular render. Now, with regards to the material, we have a section down here called matte opacity. And what matte opacity is going to do is allow us to change the alpha value on a per material basis. So I was just using the default opacity gain. And so what happens there is the matte channel is first calculated in the usual way, and then it's multiplied by this value here. So if this was 0.5, and we do a render, and look at the alpha, you notice that the cone is now, it's more of a gray color. So this is actually going, if we were to bring this into a compositing package, this would actually be semi-transparent. Okay, so this isn't exactly what we're after. So let's just change that back up to 1. And let's look what else we have here. Okay, we have solid matte. So what I'm going to do with this solid matte is I am going to make my cone transparent. Okay, and let's do a render. And let's look at the alpha channel for that. Okay, so what happens with solid matte is it makes the alpha value constant for all pixels, regardless of their transparency in the color channel. Okay, so we're still getting the alpha even though the object isn't there. So the last option that we have here is black hole. Now what happens with black hole is the matte channel is going to be fully transparent, and then it creates a hole where the object is in the image. So I'm just going to turn the transparency back, okay, and let's do a render. Okay, and if we look at the alpha channel here, that's probably what we're after. So we can render out the torus like this, and then we can render out the cone separately. And when we bring in the cone into a render or into a compositing package with this torus, we can then fit the cone right in here. Okay, so this is actually the type of matte that we want to use to get the cone going through the torus in this example. Another method that you can use to render out elements separately is the use background shader. And I will just quickly show you that. Okay, so what I've got here is just a cone on a plane. Let's look at our lights here. Okay, and let's just going to see which material is assigned to this plane just by graphing it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create materials, use background, okay, and just assign the use background shader here. Okay. And now I think what we're going to do is we're going to ray trace this. Okay, so ray tracing is turned on, and let's just go ahead and render that out. So what's happening here is with the use background shader, you're actually able to render out reflections and shadows separately. Okay, so you can see in the color channel that we have a reflection, and if we look at the matte channel, there's our shadow. Okay, so if we really wanted to, we could actually hide this by turning the primary visibility off. So right there in the render stats section. Okay, so now we're getting our reflection and the shadow. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is the composite flag that's in the render globals. So I'm just going to get a file here. And I'm just going to go down to the Save Layouts. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign a shader and make it a very bright color. So we might make it bright green. And I'm just going to change the background color that it's rendered against, just under environment. Change that to red. Okay, and let's do a render. Look at the color channel. Okay, so if we get in nice and close, see how nicely that's anti-aliased? If we get in really close to the side here, you can see with regards to the anti-aliasing is that we're getting kind of a mixture of reddish, greenish pixels, okay? So that's a good thing, unless you want to bring this into a compositing package. What's going to happen is if you bring this into a compositing package, you're going to get this kind of reddish-green halo around our green cone. So we don't really want that, okay? We don't want the edges of our, geometry to be anti-aliased against this background color, okay? So we're just going to turn on the composite flag. Under render options, the render globals, composite. Okay, let's just make that 1:1 and we'll do another render. Okay, and if we get in close to this, you'll notice that there's no anti-aliasing going on against this red background. But if we look at the alpha channel, there is. So what's going to happen is when we bring this into a compositing package, the cone is actually going to be anti-aliased against the background that we're laying it against in the compositing package.